My computer. Okay. So, recording is in progress. So, I want to thank you for being here live, for those of you who are here live, and for those of you who will listen to the replay, whether you see that on Facebook, on my website, or on YouTube. I'm Denise Stegall. I am the menopause mentor and longevity concierge because one goes with the other. If we are all going through midlife and menopause, truly, we want to make sure that we're getting out on the other side, feeling good, really in feeling good mentally, physically, emotionally. And so in the long term, we have a great quality of life, not just a good quality of life, but a great quality of life. Um, Many of us have accomplished so much at this stage in life, right? Where most of us are in our 40s to 60s. For those of you like me who started everything really early in her mid 30s, welcome to the club. But let's be real. We have career, we have family, and life kind of brings a lot of stuff to us, right? What happens is we take care of everyone else because we're women and that's what we do. But then our own health gets put on the back burner, especially when it comes to menopause, specifically perimenopause, because we really don't hear much about it. We are more and more now, but we really don't think about it. And some of the symptoms that we may be experiencing, we just think of as stress and, career, job. We're busy, and don't understand that what we could be experiencing is actually menopause. And then all of a sudden, we're confused. We're not sleeping. Our doctors are dismissing us because they don't have the information about menopause that we need them to have. But is that where it ends? No, of course not. Um, this is where I hope I come in. This series, Hormones and Harmony, is about reclaiming your health, your vitality, and also understanding your body's incredible ability to change. Our bodies are always changing. As women, we know with hormones, we start changing when we're young teenagers. We have hormone issues or situations throughout our entire life, right? So this is a time though when those hormones are again fluctuating and they're frustrating. And we really need to look for some harmony. We're looking for some harmony in our body. And when we can find the harmony in our body, we can really manage hormonal shifts much more eloquently. And of course, it's not about perfection. There is nothing perfect about this, but it really is, in my opinion, about power, about clarity, and about confidence. Confidence to feel good in your body, who you are, what you want to do, what you've accomplished, so you can take that into the next phase of life, right? So I try not to do a lot of fluffy stuff. I like to ask a lot of questions. I do like this to be a conversation. And then we always kind of see where it goes. I do want to start with this one truth when it comes to our hormones. Now, for some reason, women in the past have been under the impression that menopause is kind of like the end of our power. It's kind of like we're just finishing off being successful and we're just going to like ride off into the sunset. I challenge that because I don't believe it. I believe I know with myself. I feel more powerful now that I understand what my body is doing. But I also realize that this is a new exciting chapter in my life, right? I have a lot more wisdom about life and about what I want than I did when I was in my 20s and 30s. Yeah, sure, there are days that my energy isn't where I'd like it to be, but it's a lot better than it was before I understood menopause and hormonal change. Um, and truly, this is about you, your life, self respect, self love. So, today, if we should touch on estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, because of course these are the big three. Although there are so many other hormones that play into menopause, these are the key players. Though I would add a fourth key player would be cortisol. Um, and of course, we think of progesterone as the pregnancy hormone. Well, guess what? This is a hormone that we actually need throughout our life, even though it starts to diminish when we are 35 years old. Yes, 35 years old is when our progesterone will start to decrease. Now, for some people, is it right at 35? Probably not. I started experiencing, as I said, pretty severe perimenopausal symptoms at 37. So estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, okay, great. When you're in that phase of life where you're looking to have children, you need those, right, for that purpose. As we get older, we still need all three of them for brain health, for bone health, for sleep, our metabolism, and truly emotional resilience. Because we know in this phase of life, our emotions can get a little, I don't want to use the word crazy, but they're all over the place, right? So I'm going to throw this out to the audience real quick. How many of you have been told that your symptoms that you're experiencing were, oh, it's just stress. It's just part of life. You just have to deal with it. Like, how many people have gotten that from their physician or whoever it may have been, your uh, your spouse or your mother of all people? Anybody had that situation?
Yeah, I know I have. This is Linda. I know I have. I am postmenopausal now. When I was in menopause, I had some of those symptoms and I was told those things. So I didn't even really relate it to menopause. And for some reason, I don't know, ignorance, naivete, I thought that things would be different somehow in postmenopause, but it really is just a continuation of all the menopausal symptoms. There's nothing really that has changed. Some of them have even gotten worse because the levels of hormones keep diminishing. So yeah, I'm glad
Yeah.
to hear you mention that because that's a big myth. And as you said before, people are often misdiagnosed because the doctors don't know what else to call it.
Absolutely. And Amy, did you have a thought to
Yeah,
share?
no, same, just being told to just deal with it. And also, the other thing that really struck me when I was first experiencing the symptoms was how how skilled people are at changing the subject. Like, we're not talking about this.
It's very true. So for me at 37, when I went to the doctor, I was really fortunate that my husband, who is actually a doctor, he was picking up vibes. Um, and he knew I was not quite myself. Um, and one day he actually literally grabbed me by the shoulders and looked me dead in the face and said, Denise, something's going on. We've got to figure this out. Um, in my head, I think he said, You're driving me crazy. He doesn't remember saying that.
I'm going with he said it. Yeah.
He probably said it. Um, but it was at that moment that I realized that all of this internal angst and stress, and the fact that I wasn't sleeping, I was tired and I was cranky all the time. I thought I was internalizing that and not really, it wasn't being projected on him. Well, I realized at that point how wrong I was. And so, what I realized at that stage, when we go through menopause, and I'm going to use menopause as that, perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. I'll It's just easier to use one word than three.
Right.
But as we're going through menopause, we're not the only ones going through it. Our spouses, our family, our coworkers, all of the people that we are around actually experience menopause with us in a different way, but they pick up on our energy and they pick up on our moods. So we think that we're doing okay, we're going to power through it because we're women, right? That's what we do. But we don't realize, and sometimes until it's too late, until there's been a big blow up or a big argument or a problem at work, that we realize that this is something a lot bigger than us handling on our own. And Amy, I would agree. When I started asking questions, I mean, I asked my mom at one point, and she was in a panic, like, oh my God, there's something wrong with you. You have to go to the doctor, which didn't help.
Yeah.
Right. And at another stage, she really didn't remember going through menopause the way my sister would remember her going through menopause. Um, but she was one of the people who her doctor actually put her on HRT pretty early. Now, it was in that stage many years ago where they put women on HRT for a short period of time to manage symptoms, and then they took them off. We can talk about that in a little bit. But I do want to circle back around to when we go to the doctor and we're experiencing mood swings or we're not sleeping. The challenge that our doctors have, whether you go to your OBGYN or a primary care doctor or somebody in Western medicine, the challenge really is that they haven't been trained in menopause. So it really isn't their fault. We want to always point the blame. And really it's not their fault. It's part of the fault of their training or lack thereof. I was talking with an OBGYN recently, and she was saying throughout her all of her training, they had maybe 1 hour of menopause. It was kind of like, oh, and by the way, women go through menopause, and these are the symptoms. And that was it. So of course, now all these years later, as she's going through menopause, and you'll see on social media now, that there are a lot of female OBGYNs that are going, ladies, I'm really sorry, I didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
they
true.
didn't, right? And so now they're trying to kind of pick up and learn what they needed to know many years ago, but they're trying to kind of pick up in their midlife to pick up the information for us, so they can help the next generation of women going through menopause. I do want to backtrack a bit because I mentioned I'm going to use the word menopause for the entire process. But of course, I've mentioned perimenopause, and we've also mentioned postmenopause. So perimenopause is that stage which usually begins around 40, but if your progesterone starts to drop at 35, in my humble opinion, in my educated opinion, by the research that I have done and all of the readings that I have done and trainings that I have done, I would say that actually it does begin at 35. Now, progesterone starts to decrease, but estrogen and testosterone are still pretty vibrant there. The challenge with losing progesterone at 35 is, of course, a lot of women have kids at that age, that are running around the house, and the progesterone starting to decrease is causing them sleep issues. So progesterone is really great for sleep. It helps us with sleep when it's not trying to have a baby. So if at 35, or in my case 37, I'm not sleeping, and it's because my progesterone is decreasing, and I'm going to the doctor and they're like, here's a sleeping pill. That's great, but it's not actually addressing the actual problem, right? We're really good at covering up symptoms. We're really not great at figuring out, we're getting better at figuring out what the actual cause is of that symptom. So perimenopause typically will go into your early 40s. And then that's when more women start to notice change. And what they say is the average age of menopause, which is the definition, is the 12th anniversary of your last period. So you go through, if you don't have a period for 12 months, that 12-month anniversary, you are menopausal. The very next day you wake up and you're postmenopausal. So that's why this is such a long I hate to say journey because life is a journey, but this is such a long transition because it really never stops. Once you're postmenopausal, there are other things going on. So before I start talking about estrogen and progesterone, I just want to ask Linda or Amy if they have any thoughts or questions.
No, not at this time.
Okay.
I think actually you just summed up for me the difference between menopause and postmenopause better than I've ever really heard it, because I've always wondered, when does menopause stop and post begin? And basically what you're saying is menopause is just that one day. So we're all in postmenopause, really. And it's sort of a misnomer the way they talk about postmenopause, because like I said, the symptoms don't stop. Well, now I understand why, because menopause is really just that one day. And lots of times, life is happening. So, much like you were saying, if you're going through stress anyway from things in life, you really don't know the difference between, is menopause causing this or is life causing this?
Well, and
Exactly.
there's also I feel like a myth out there that once you're postmenopausal, you don't have the symptoms anymore. Like
Right.
you've crossed this bridge and now everything is fine again. It's like, no,
Right. Well, because
I
think
haven't
about it.
slept through the night in 15 years.
Exactly. A
Weird.
17, like here.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, my
yeah.
my I've gotten better since I started all of this because I've learned tricks and I personally am on bioidentical hormones. That for me was life changing because I wasn't sleeping and my night sweats would start at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and go all
Hmm.
night long.
Yeah,
So I mean, I don't even know why they would call it a night sweat because it just never stopped. So for me that was something that I needed to do for me, and for everybody it's a little different. I remember
right.
talking to a friend of mine who I was probably 49 and she was 62, and I remember chatting with her, and those of you who are listening and not watching me watching the replay, she was doing this the whole time, like fanning herself, and I asked her, and I said, Lori, why are you constantly fanning yourself? And she's like, Denise, these damn hot flashes. And I thought, she's 62. I'm like, oh my God, you can still get them. And
Uh,
that's when I really started to research more and more about postmenopause because like we said, menopause is that one day. And then postmenopause, well, I was postmenopausal at 53. So at 53, my symptoms were supposed to stop. Of course not. Why don't they stop? Well, for a lot of reasons, depending on your body, your genetics, body composition, all of that, your lifestyle. Those things have a huge role. I seem to have gotten really, I got I drew the lucky straw, I guess, in my family because I started early and I'm still dealing with a lot of the symptoms. My younger sister, nothing, which is really
yeah,
frustrating.
same.
I thought
Though
excuse me, but I thought that, since it's different for every woman, I thought that I was lucky and had escaped some of the symptoms, but they just started so late that,
Mm,
I thought, okay, I'm not having hot flashes. And it's only recently that I've been starting to have hot flashes, and I've been postmenopausal for years. And so, even like when you talk about night sweats, I've never had them, but I don't want to speak too quickly because they might still be coming.
like, man, I'm
you
jealous.
never know.
Well, think of what's happening. So we're still living, right? We're now postmenopausal. We're still alive. We're still breathing. We're still vibrant. We still have things that we want to do in life. But our estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are still decreasing. They don't stop decreasing after postmenopause. They continue to drop. And I wish I had pulled up this slide, and I may be able to do it in a minute. Um, it's a slide that shows a woman at 30 all the way through age 80 and how estrogen, how much it drops each 10 years. Um, to the point where a woman at 80, like she has, when you think of the way that the chart is, and I really hope I can find it quickly, the chart has her estrogen in her ankles. Whereas when we're young and vibrant and in our 20s and 30s, the progesterone and all of the hormones are, we're filled, and then they just progressively start to decline. So estrogen, as I mentioned in the beginning, is bone health. It's osteoporosis protective. It's cardio protective. It helps with sleep. It helps with insulin resistance. It helps with thyroid and adrenals. Wait a minute. No wonder why we are still having either symptoms or it could be a new symptom that we don't think is menopause because it's not on that list of hot flashes and night sweats and mood swings, right? But the fact that estrogen specifically has over 400 roles in your body, there are estrogen receptors all throughout your body. Well, who knew that? I didn't know that until 5 years ago. I thought estrogen just, it was has had to do with, having babies or not. And that was it. Wow. When I realized that the role estrogen actually plays in our body, we when we look at some older women, I mean, I look at my mother's in her 80s, so she's a bit of an extreme case because she's kind of really far out there. But when you look at women in their, the early 70s to mid 70s, and they're starting to just have health problems, one thing after the next. Now, my mom is pretty lucky because she really doesn't have anything other than she's had a thyroid issue for 25 years. All of the women her age have a thyroid issue, and they're all on levothyroxine or some type of
Singing my
medication.
song. I had no idea it could be related to menopause. I
Mhm.
take levothyroxine every day.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow.
I didn't
But
know that.
no, but our again, like these are studies that are just really getting understood in the last 10 years. They're really starting to focus more on menopause because let's think about this. And if we're in our 50s, I'm just going to assume we're all in our 50s. The physicians that we've been seeing are a little older. They went through their training, lack thereof training. The curriculum was created by men. And so when they were doing studies, they weren't doing studies on women. Well, you don't do studies on pregnant women because, that's scary, right? Well, women were really a challenge to do studies on. Everyone was afraid because, women were frail. That was the word that they used very often back then. Um, Men are a lot easier because they understand one another. If you have a male doctor and a male researcher and a male research participant, they're talking the same language. Whereas women, we start talking about hot flashes and mood swings, and they're like, what are you talking? Like, they don't understand. So this is one of the reasons why our doctors just are just not clueless, but they're learning, but they really don't understand the connection between menopause, aging, and our symptoms. Years ago, I went to the doctor, and he wanted to put me on an antidepressant. And of course, I looked at him and I went, "What the bleep for?" And he goes, "Because at that point, I was getting really severe headaches. Headaches is another symptom of menopause. So if you had headaches before, which I did, I always had allergy kind of sinus headaches. They were getting worse, but I certainly didn't think it was because of menopause. So I go to the doctor and she sends me to the neurologist who says, okay, well, we'll just put you on a low dose antidepressant. Why? I'm like, I'm not depressed. I don't have anxiety. I have headaches. So his response, now granted, this was a much older man. He said to me, he goes, well, we find that, SSRIs, really help get rid of headaches for girls like you.
Oh,
Girls like me. Again, he was a lot older, but still, I was in my 40s. I was not a young girl. I was a grown woman. And to feel, and I felt so deflated and disrespected. And he said, basically said to me, like, well, you want to get rid of the headaches, don't you? Again, at the
Wow.
time, and of course, I didn't take the antidepressant because it didn't make sense to me. I'm not depressed. But how many women, and I don't know the numbers offhand because they keep changing, but 75% was the last number, the last percentage that I had seen. 75% of women who go to their doctor with these basic challenges, mood, sleep, irritability, all of those, headaches, they're given a prescription for something that actually does not address the problem. And again, most of our doctors don't understand, which is why we need to have these conversations. And people like me and Dr. Linda, who is really interested in understanding more so we can help other people come through this transition. And it's a long transition, right? It's kind of like three transitions: perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, so that we can come out. And instead of just surviving through all of this, we want to thrive. We want to live into our 70s and 80s and beyond and feel good. In the medical world, the term is, how does a patient feel, function, or survive? I've changed that with my clients. How do we want to feel, function, and thrive? And it completely changes the conversation. Before I go on, any thoughts, questions, comments? Okay.
I agree with the approach, and not just, suck it up and put up with it, but really figure out what works here.
And there are lots of different things that work for different people. To me, this is the next frustrating piece. The first part is realizing that it's menopause. Now, granted, there are some people who get severe headaches that, maybe they do have a brain tumor, like Arnold Schwarzenegger in that movie. I forget the movie, but he was like, it's not the tumor. Maybe there is a reason that someone is having severe headaches, and that person needs to obviously seek treatment for headaches. I would imagine, though, that they're not going to their doctor with severe headaches, and the doctor's just looking at her going, okay, here's an antidepressant. For somebody
Yeah.
like that, obviously there's protocol, there's therapy for that person. Most of us, that's not the case. We're just getting severe headaches because of menopause, because of our the estrogen. Part of it too is if we're not sleeping, which is where cortisol comes in, which I mentioned earlier, is like that fourth one. If we're not sleeping and we're tired, we tend to get more headaches that way too. So all of these pieces fit together. So onto this, the to me, the next frustrating piece is trying to figure out what works for you. Okay, well, now that you've realized, a lot of this could be hormonal. I always recommend to my clients to get a hormone test done. Medical doctors will poo-poo it. Every single one of my traditional doctors have said to me, well, Denise, hormones fluctuate. So if you're taking a test, and especially if it's a urine test, it could be, it could be off. Like the numbers aren't going to be accurate. Well, what if you don't have any baseline, if you don't know where your hormones are, how do you know that you're in menopause, or how do you know how to address the symptom, address the problem, which is causing the problem that is causing the symptom? So I've actually, every year I take a Dutch test. And I have no connection to Dutch test other than the fact that I take one. And case in point, the very first test that I took, and it's over a 24-hour period. It might be a 12-hour period. It's a urine test. So you pee on a stick like 5 or 6 times a day, and then you send that in. When I got the results to my first test, I was floored. The way they do the test results is kind of like your gas tank, full to empty, the wrong way. When I got the results, all of my hormones were almost in the empty tank. Like the tank was empty. So of course I wasn't sleeping and I was having these all of these horrible uh, symptoms, and that just it seemed like it was like every day it was something else. Joint pain. Really? Joint pain on top of everything else? Yeah, joint pain is another symptom. Very rarely talked about, but uh, Dr. Marie Claire Haver talks about it a little bit in her book, The New Menopause, which I hit again. I'm like, great, one more thing. But again, knowing where my hormones were so low, then I was able to say, okay, what do I do to fix this? And so this is where I started to do a lot more research. I've been doing research for 17 years because more and more information comes available, right? A lot of it is I'm an N of one, which is why I like to talk to other people and get their input and find out what they've done. But one of the first things that I looked at was my diet. I was eating pretty well, um, but I wasn't eating as well as I thought, right? And so I did a food log, and everybody hates to log their food. I think we hate to do it because we realize how often we cheat and we, sneak things in that are, oh, I'll have a donut today. Oh, I'll have a candy bar tomorrow, right? So all of these little bits and pieces, these little cheats add up. Now, I totally believe in the 80-20 rule because if all I ate was, salads and protein in my life, I would be very bored. Um, right? So 80-20. But what I realized was I just wasn't eating as cleanly as I thought I was. And I realized that by logging that there were certain foods that were triggering my headaches. One of the things that I know for sure at this stage, I was drinking not Crystal Light, but something like that. And it's sweetened with erythritol. I was drinking this stuff every day because it was 0 calorie. Yeah, it had no sugar in it, but the erythritol was spiking my headaches. So I was
Mm.
already getting headaches, and now this fake sugar was spiking them even more. So that's the beauty of food logging because you really do start to see patterns. Um, Most of us we grew up in this culture where the diet culture where people were like eat less, move more, you gotta eat less, you gotta exercise more, calories in, calories out. And yes, there is something to say about that, but at menopause that can actually backfire. And that was another shock. Anyone got a thought on that one?
I would love to hear
Oh,
more because I'm in that place now where I am working with a dietitian and I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure this stuff out. And I promise you, like you, I mean, I had given up fried foods and stuff like that a long time ago. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I would snack. Like I am a snacker, so I'm getting that. And occasionally I'd like to have a glass of wine. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
noticing the things that I probably should get rid of. But even now, when I'm eating cleaner, I'm not seeing the weight dropping off. So I'm trying to
right.
figure out what do we do next? So I would love to hear you talk more about that.
Absolutely. So a lot of this has to, again, with estrogen helps balance insulin, right? So as we get older, people always think that, you have to be a certain weight to be insulin resistant. Your diet can affect that. Estrogen affects that. Right. Thank you. One more insult to injury, right? So that's part of it. So yes, we want to make sure that we're balancing our blood sugar. So we don't want to have any spikes because that's one thing at this stage in life that really affects our weight, whether we're not losing it or gaining it, right? We've probably at this point gained some and going, where did this come from? Especially that minnow belly, the tire around the belly. Anybody? Yep.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um, what I have experienced, and again, everybody's a little different. What I have experienced with eating And eating and exercise in this respect go together. Focusing on protein. Now, I'm not one of those people who are like macros, 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 but you do need to pay attention to the amount of quality protein you're eating. The second piece is weight training. Myself and so many people, some clients and other friends, once they started weight training 2 or 3 days a week, and it's usually recommended when you start to only do 2 days a week, your body composition changes. Why? One, muscle takes a lot less room, takes up a lot less room, right? Muscle does weigh more than fat. So if you're just looking at the scale going, oh, wait a minute, I gained 2 pounds, it could be 2 pounds of muscle that you've gained, right? So at this stage, it really is more about gaining muscle, maintaining what you have, gaining more, because we're losing muscle mass. Thanks again to our declining hormones. Estrogen, testosterone play a role there. And so quality protein and lifting weights will absolutely change your body composition. Again, it's not necessarily about the number on the scale. Like I said, I mean, I fluctuate a couple of pounds here, like every other day. Um, did I drink enough water? Did I have something that was more salty? Did I sleep? All of those pieces um, affect weight. So if you're not sleeping, if even if you're sleeping most of the night, but you're waking up once or twice, but you fall back to sleep pretty well, you're disrupting your body, you're disrupting your circadian rhythm, and your cortisol is spiking. When your cortisol spikes, you can't lose weight because your body is constantly in flight or fight mode. And so it's not doing the digesting, it's not doing the resting that and the repairing that it's supposed to be doing. So it's just holding on to the weight, which is frustrating. So again, all of these pieces are connected. So you can't it's not just one thing. If you did this one thing right, you'd lose the weight. It's all of these things put together. Thoughts?
Makes sense.
Yeah, I hear so often that, especially in the world that I live in, there's this one specific food that you should eat, in menopause.
Oh, yeah.
Um, right. I mean, we've been hearing that since the 80s, right? There's the cabbage diet, there's um all the diets that we hear now, keto, paleo, um, all of them, vegan, carnivore. As much as I say we need to pay attention to the quality protein that we're eating, it needs to be good quality lean proteins, fatty fishes. A lot of these diets, diet with the capital D, like keto diet, um, they one are meant short term, um, and they don't focus on the quality. Now, part of it does, like if you're eating keto, you're eating a lot more fat. If you're doing paleo, you're eating a lot more meat, as you are with carnivore, but it doesn't talk about the quality. And
Mm-hmm.
here at this stage, quality matters. You always talk about quantity over quality. This is where quality matters, right? I mean, my husband and I on Friday night is date night. And there are two restaurants that we go to quite frequently. One of them has a kick butt burger, and the other one has an amazing steak that just melts in your mouth, right? But it's a filet mignon, and we split an 8-ounce steak. Maybe it's a 10-ounce steak. It's probably a 10-ounce steak, right? So quality tastes good, satiating. I'm getting the calories that my body needs. I'm getting the protein that my body needs without giving it too much. The same thing with the burger. More, I would say 9 times out of 10, we split the burger. Maybe we'll have the fries, maybe we won't. I'd say probably we do every now and then. We do probably more often than not. But if we're splitting that burger, we're then also having a salad with it. So again, there's the quality And as I mentioned earlier, I'm an 80/20 person. 80% of the time, if you're eating the right way, every now and then, that 20%, Friday date night, it's okay to enjoy something that's not particularly healthy, right? So diet is such a personal, this is a journey to me. Diet, finding the right diet with a little d, meaning the foods that you eat. Finding the right diet for you is a journey. But once you dial it in, um, then you'll realize that more often than not, it's plant focused with lean meats and fatty fishes. I talk about very often, I just tell people eat real food. And then that's where we start. And then we kind of figure with food logging, I know again, everybody hates it, but when we log our food and we start to see the patterns and how certain things makes us feel, if we feel bloated every time we eat, cheese sticks, well, maybe that says something. Maybe we shouldn't be eating the cheese sticks. Is it the cheese or is it the fried? The fact that they're fried. Um, Probably doesn't matter, but either way, something that we should avoid. But I think also, there are certain vegetables that, um, have been kind of dubbed, superfoods.
Mm.
Um, you know, well, if they're healthy for you, they're all superfoods. But specifically, they talk about kale. It's one of the few foods my husband will not eat. I mean, he's great. He will eat just about anything. He will not eat kale. So I don't make kale. I don't buy it, because there's so many other great foods that can replace that, right? And raw veggies, especially broccoli and cauliflower, will give you belly bloat.
Yeah.
I mean, most people don't know that. Like you go to a party, right? And there's a nice crudité veggie platter, and all the food is raw, which is great, except the broccoli and the cauliflower is going to give you gas. So the way to get around that is to actually blanch it for just like 30 seconds. And it takes whatever the compound out. I can't think of what it is off the
Oh,
top of my head. Yeah.
okay.
So little cooking tidbit.
There
Yeah.
you go.
So again, starting with real food, 80% of the time. And if you're really struggling with weight and really want to dial in, focus on your eating real food 90% of the time. Right. And the rest of it is life. I mean, I'm with you, Linda. I'm never going to give up my wine. I'm just not. It tastes good. I enjoy it. It's a social thing. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, Again, I'm not having a bottle of wine every night, but when I have a glass of wine, I'm going to enjoy it. And I think that's a piece that we need to remember. If we eat something or drink something that's not necessarily quote unquote healthy, we need to do it, enjoy it, no guilt. And then the next meal, I what is the phrase my friend always says? Get it right the very next bite.
Mm.
Hmm.
No, no guilt, because as women, we are so good at guilting ourselves about everything. I shouldn't have eaten this. I should have done this instead. I should exercise more. So thoughts?
Well, you make me wonder when you, well, first of all, I do agree with that. If you're going to uh eat or drink something that's, not 100%, then enjoy it. Don't feel guilty about it. But you made me think when you talked about the broccoli and cauliflower about just some of the digestive health and whether or not that is related as well, because I do notice that more and more foods now will make me bloat. I'm even wondering, okay, do I
Hmm.
need to be taking a prebiotic and a probiotic? It's like, what do I need to do? So, what do you know about the relationship between digestive health in general and menopause?
Yeah, gut health is a huge, huge challenge. Um, I actually have had gut issues when I was young. Um, my mom used to tell me, we used to say that I had a poopy tummy
Mm,
because I had digestive issues, and sometimes like my tummy would growl and it would hurt, and other times like I felt like not so much bloated, but it was refluxy.
mm,
Um, and so, again, when we were little, we ate very simply, but we still had, a soda here. We had a bottle of soda every week, one bottle for the whole family, all four of us, and we had chips and we had pizza on Friday. And we did a lot of the things that, I know now that those little pieces do add up when it's a little bit every single day, as opposed to kind of being a treat. So for me, that actually stopped when I started eating better. When I got into my mid 40s, I started to look a little bit more into gut health and menopause. And there's definitely part of it, and this is a hard thing. Is it menopause? Is it aging? You kind of can't have one without the other, right?
right.
Mm,
And
sure.
that makes it more complicated. So yes, digestive issues are definitely more prominent as we go through menopause. My mom still has tummy issues. She take and I always recommend a probiotic for sure. Even if you're eating probiotic foods, then
Mm.
that's probably not necessary. But a lot of us aren't eating, a ton of sauerkraut and kimchi and fermented foods. Um, it's not necessarily part of our American diet, like what we eat. I mean, culturally or traditionally, right? I mean, the only time I ever used to eat sauerkraut was on a hot dog,
Yeah.
right? But now I know I
Yeah.
have my jar of sauerkraut. I'm a little extreme with this one. Um, but a probiotic really does help. What I have found, so probiotic, prebiotic, you can find them in a pill together. But something I have found recently that has really been a game changer is a digestive enzyme. Why would we not think as we're getting older and things are decreasing and depleting, and this is everything in our bodies, right? We're not getting younger. um, Immune systems, our immune system, and our endocrine system, all of these things are getting older, and so they just don't function the way they used to. And so the digestive enzyme, and you can get them pretty much anywhere. And they I don't recommend any particular one. I'm not wedded to one or another. um there are the one company that I buy stuff from more and more often is called the Women's Health Network. And I've been using one of their products for over 15 years. So I trust them. But this digestive enzyme, it just helps break down the food as you're digesting it, as opposed to sometimes the food just kind of sits there. And if there's not enough stomach juice, stomach acid, um, to break down the food, the digestive enzyme basically comes in and brings in the additional enzymes that are missing. And this could be because, our microbiome is depleted because we've taken antibiotics, we've had different exposure to heavy metals or toxins, whatever it may be, right? I live in Minnesota. Like there's like every corner there's a farm, right? They're not organic farms, so there's pesticides everywhere, right? um so those are things that I know myself have helped, and have helped my mom and helped my sister. My sister had a lot of the same challenges I did growing up with her stomach. Um, but we both now take a probiotic and a digestive enzyme. I have an ebook. It's called Gut Matters. Gut Matters. I think that's what it's called. I can get the link and send it to you both.
Okay.
I think
That'd be
that would
good.
be helpful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. What I'll also do is I will send both of you a copy of the the slide that I was mentioning earlier, and I apologize for not having it popped up, the slide that shows the decrease in hormones, because it's really a good visual. Let's
Okay.
see. The last thing that I wanted to talk about was mindset. And I think by attending today and reading and, really paying attention to uh, the information that's out there. It is sometimes difficult to sift through what's real and what's not. But I think the more you do it, the more you realize this person knows what they're talking about. This person's just trying to sell me something, that kind of thing. Um, but I do believe that mindset is such a big part of midlife and managing menopause. Um, Obviously, hormones affect our emotions. Um, but I think we can also realize that that doesn't define us. Menopause doesn't define us, right? Um, when we're managing self-doubt, brain fog, because we're not sleeping, and brain fog is a really annoying symptom of menopause. But what happens is, we start to let all of these things kind of affect our mood and our mindset. Um, and that actually makes things worse because if you feel a hot flash coming on, you can kind of get ready. Okay, I'm going to get my little fan, right? It'll be over in 30 seconds compared to kind of the negative Nelly, like, oh God, I got another hot flash. Oh my God, I'm dying. And that just sends a whole different message to your body um, and your brain. And that's a really hard thing to come back from. Like once you start going down that negativity cycle, it's really hard to come back from. So I just always want to mention this to clients and to people who I'm talking to, that mindset can change everything, right? A lot of times I talk about it as mental fitness, reframing the narrative. I think that's probably the better explanation. Um, we know what we've got going on, and if we're actively searching for answers, then that's great, right? We're already reframing the conversation, right? I do find for a lot of women that journaling, not just food journaling, but journaling about, their emotions, how they feel, all of those pieces are really helpful to really understand completely what's going on in your body. So I mean,
Good.
obviously it's a big piece of it. It's not all of it, but it does affect how we respond as opposed to react to what we have going on in life and menopause. Thoughts?
Well, I just think it's great that we're having these conversations and that we're really bringing it out into the sunlight because for too long we just didn't talk about anything. And so any conversation is a good conversation.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
I agree. It's not one of the things that, in my experience with me and with family members and friends, it's not the kind of thing that your mom would sit you down and talk to you about. It's
Oh,
like
for sure.
the
Yeah.
information was just not discussed. And we do need to break the silence on that so that our daughters and nieces and whomever can have a better understanding and have, as you say,
Yes.
the proper mindset for it because it's coming. I mean, there's nothing you
Yeah,
can
and
do
be
about it. It's
prepared
coming.
for it,
Right.
Exactly.
right? Because
You don't get
I
to say
mean,
no.
right, because I'm sure none of us were prepared, like
No.
at all. I mean, my mom still doesn't think she went through menopause. My sister and I completely disagree with her because we remember the years where she was just her emotions were all over the place. Like you kind of tiptoed around her, like what's the mood going to be today? You know, we didn't understand then what was going on. We certainly do now. So that's what we have for you all today. Um, so Hormones in Harmony is something that I do every month. I think it's really important to connect on a regular basis. Um, Please, if you haven't already, make sure you follow me on LinkedIn. And also on YouTube, I just said do. I do a podcast called Healthy Living, Happy Life, which is interestingly, and hold on, I have it right here. Haha, the name of my book. I wrote this about
Nice.
5 years ago, almost 5 years ago. And the reason I wrote Healthy Living, Happy Life, because everyone's always like, oh, but I just want to be happy. And yes, of course, we all want to be happy. But if we're not healthy, and at this stage in life, if menopause is affecting our physical, mental, and emotional self, then we can't, the happiness that we're seeking will always elude us. So, ladies, thank you. I really
Very
appreciate
nice.
you.
Thank you.
And you know how to find me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, please let me know. And let's stay connected.
Okay,
Yes, this
sounds
was
good.
great. Thank you so much. Much
Yep,
success to me. So I think I am following you already, but I'll definitely be paying attention to when you'll be doing other webinars and things like this. So
yep,
thank you.
You're
yep.
very
Thank you
welcome.
so
Thank you,
much.
ladies. Have a great
Okay,
afternoon.
yep, bye.
Bye. I